They showed up without warning. 1 minute, the skies were clear. The next, they were filled with metal. Slick, silver arcs cutting through cloud banks like goddamn knives through butter. Some people prayed. Others took selfies. Me? I lit a cigarette and stood on the roof of my workshop, watching them lower their little floating ambassadors like we were supposed to be impressed. The one that came to Earth's Central Council looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a priest. Flowing robes, glowing tendrils, and that too smooth voice like it was trying not to scare us. It floated a few feet off the ground, too proud to even touch our dirt. "We come in peace," it said. "We offer Earth protection." Protection. That word stuck with me like a bad aftertaste. I was sitting in the back of the room, behind military brass, suits, and overpaid diplomats. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My brother, General Harlan Mace, pulled strings, said I'd want to see this, said I'd get a kick out of it. He wasn't wrong. The alien kept talking. Said there were dangers beyond the veil of this galaxy. Said humanity was fragile, young, unprepared. It tried to dress it all up in pretty words, but the message was clear. Bend the knee, take the deal, and they'd protect us. From what? They never said. Harlan leaned over and muttered, "They're pissing on our boots and calling it holy water." I grunted. "They're used to scared races. We're not built like that." Then the ambassador said something that turned the whole room cold. "If Earth accepts the terms of the Galactic Concord, your sovereignty will be absorbed into our union. Your military will be disbanded, your nuclear arsenal dismantled, your species will be monitored for its own safety." There it was. Not a warning, a leash. I stood up. Harlan didn't stop me. "Hell," he smirked. "Let me get this straight," I said, loud enough that every smug politician turned around. "You show up, uninvited, point your ships at our planet, and offer us protection from some invisible threat we've never heard of, in exchange for total surrender?" The alien looked at me, confused. "It is not surrender. It is integration for survival. We have saved thousands of civilizations." I walked forward, slow, each bootstep echoing through that marble hall. I didn't have rank. I didn't have clearance. But in that moment, I had something else. The weight of every human who'd ever bled for this planet. We've survived ice ages, world wars, plagues, nukes, and each other. We've clawed our way up from mud and bone without your help. And now you want us to kneel? For what? Protection? The alien hesitated. "Yes, for your survival." I smiled, bitter and sharp. "We're not afraid to die." And then I laughed, loud, ugly, the kind of laugh that comes from a place deeper than logic. Other voices joined in, Harlan first, then some Marines in the back. Even one of the generals cracked a smile. The alien looked around like it didn't understand. Because it didn't. That's the thing about humans. They always expect us to beg, to break. They don't get that pain made us. We're not here in spite of it. We're here because of it. I leaned in close, just enough so its glowing tendrils twitched. "You want to protect us?" I let the words sit. Then I said it. "From who?" What came next wasn't peace. They didn't take kindly to being laughed at, and we didn't take kindly to threats. They thought we'd beg for mercy. But Earth doesn't beg. We make war. The alien's glow dimmed slightly, the way a flame stutters when the wind shifts direction. Its eyes, or whatever passed for eyes, seemed to shimmer, scanning me like I was some sort of error it couldn't calculate. "You laugh," it said, voice flat now, stripped of the ceremonial calm. "But you do not understand the scope of the threat. You are not equipped to face what waits in the dark." I shrugged. Neither were we equipped to survive the Cold War or build weapons that can level continents. Yet here we are, still breathing, still dangerous. Behind me, I felt the shift in the room. Diplomats uneasy, soldiers ready, the air charged like right before a thunderstorm. Harlan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His face said it all. Let it play out. The alien floated backward slightly, like it sensed the mood shifting. Then Earth chooses war? No, I said. We don't choose war. We survive it. And we win it. It tilted its head. You are an aggressive species. You respond to compassion with hostility. I almost laughed again. You think this is compassion? Coming here with warships, giving us ultimatums and calling it mercy? You don't know humans at all. And just like that, the conversation ended. No formal goodbye, no handshake, no mutual understanding. The alien hovered silently for a moment longer, then turned and glided out of the room. Harlan broke the silence first. They're not going to take that well. They weren't planning to, I said. They came expecting a signature, not resistance. He nodded slowly. We need to get ahead of this. That night, Earth's skies turned red. It started with the blackout of satellite relays, communications jammed, every orbiting satellite fried in one synchronized burst of EMP. No warning, no declaration. Then came the purge beams, bright columns of light that fell from the sky, targeting military installations, command centers, and nuclear silos. Not every site was hit, but enough were taken out to cripple first strike capabilities. They weren't trying to destroy us. They were trying to domesticate us. But whoever was running their strategy didn't understand one crucial fact. When you corner a human, especially a soldier, especially one who's already lost something, they don't surrender. They bite. I was in Nevada when it started. Harlan got me on an evac chopper, against my wishes. Said I had more value alive than dead. Said the real war hadn't started yet. He was right. The next morning, our forces in Eastern Europe made contact. An alien cruiser, 20 kilometers long, hovering low, dropping drone swarms like a damn hornet nest, met resistance from a coalition of U.S. Rangers, Polish Special Ops, and Russian Black Ops units. Strange bedfellows, sure, but survival has a way of making friends out of enemies. They managed to disable the ship's gravity core using old-school kinetic artillery. Not lasers, not tech, just massive tungsten rods shot into its underbelly at Mach 7. The thing crashed like a dying god, wiping out half a forest and causing a shockwave that could be felt from Berlin to Minsk. Humanity had drawn first blood. And just like that, everything changed. For the first time, the world wasn't divided by flags or borders. It was divided by two things: those who fought and those who waited to die. The Intercontinental Human Defense Pact was formed in 36 hours, faster than anything in history. Old enemies buried hatchets, stockpiles were opened, secret bases unsealed. The kind of tech that was supposed to be theoretical was suddenly rolled out in armored columns. I found myself in one of the black sites beneath the Rockies. Harlan dragged me in as part of the advisory council, not because I was a soldier, but because, as he put it, you're one of the few bastards who told them off to their face. In the war room, the air was thick with tension and caffeine. Generals barked orders. Scientists argued about shield frequencies and quantum interference. And at the center of it all was Harlan, calm and cold as ice. They've underestimated us, he said, pointing at a hollow map of enemy fleet positions. They assumed we'd fold. We didn't. That's their weakness, pride. So we exploit it. I leaned over the table. They won't go easy next time. They wanted obedience. Now they'll want extinction. He nodded. Let them try. 2 weeks into the conflict, the real war began. The aliens, calling themselves the Yashari Dominion, launched planetary reclamation units in major cities. Not bombs, not troops, machines designed to neutralize and repurpose anything they touched. Metal, concrete, even biomass. We watched New Delhi turn to black glass in 12 minutes. But that wasn't the end of New Delhi, because humans didn't run. They regrouped. A survivor cell in the underground metro turned their tunnels into kill zones. They didn't have plasma rifles or shield tech, just makeshift IEDs, steel blades, and the kind of rage that doesn't fade. They held out for 5 days. Then reinforcements came. By month 1, Earth was divided into 3 zones. Red zones, alien-controlled cities, reduced to wastelands or machine hives. Gray zones, active combat territories. No one really controlled them. Black zones, human strongholds, armed, angry, and growing smarter by the day. Harlan set up mobile command units. I traveled between them, helping coordinate resistance cells, setting up secure transmissions, keeping morale alive. That's when the stories started spreading. Not propaganda, real stories. Of a sniper in Rio who dropped 10 Wishari officers with a World War II-era rifle. Of a boy in Johannesburg who hacked into one of their drones with a gaming console and used it to lead an entire battalion into an ambush. Of a man in Alaska who walked alone into a Yashari outpost with nothing but an axe, and didn't walk out alone. The galaxy had labeled us primitive. Turns out, primitive doesn't mean weak. It means dangerous, and the Yashari were starting to see it. Their losses began stacking up. Their ground units, designed for compliance enforcement, not warfare, were being torn apart by human ingenuity and sheer madness. They tried to deploy psychological weapons, dream interference, voice loop disorientation, neurochemical suppression. Didn't work. We don't fear nightmares. We live in them. They tried to negotiate again. This time, not with an offer, but a warning. I was there, in an underground comms bunker outside of Prague, when the message came through. The Yashari emissary, no longer glowing and graceful, just tired. You're the only species to resist this violently. You fight even in hopelessness. Why? I looked at the screen. We've buried our children, watched our homes burn, breathed poison air. You think this is hopeless? This is Tuesday, alien. The emissary stared. You will bring about your own extinction. I smiled without humor. Then remember our name. Back in the war room, Harlan called it Phase 2. They're bleeding, he said. Now we take the knife deeper. I asked the question we were all thinking. How? Their fleet still outguns us 10-1. Their tech is a century ahead of ours. He looked up, cold fire in his eyes. We hit them where it hurts. We had captured one of their scouts in Greenland, alive, barely. The thing wasn't a soldier. It was a biologist. But it had access codes, coordinates. Through it, we learned where their staging fleets were orbiting. Not in our solar system, but close enough. A moon, dead, forgotten, one of Saturn's. We'd already been building the Dead Hand, a doomsday system meant to fire even if every leader was gone. A relic of the Cold War. Now it had a purpose. We mounted it with retrofitted alien plasma cores, stolen from downed Ishari cruisers, fused with old Russian Mervy tech. The result? A weapon that wasn't supposed to exist. It had no name, no logo, just a trigger. Harlan gave the order himself. Let this be our hello. We launched it in silence. The payload struck their staging fleet in orbit over the dead moon. We don't know exactly how many ships they lost. But when our sensors finally picked up the aftermath, the moon had cracked. The fleet was gone. Gone. And for the first time since this war began, we had something we hadn't dared to feel. Hope. They offered us protection. We gave them war. They brought fear. We answered with fury, and now they were starting to understand. Humans don't just survive. We avenge. By the third month, we stopped calling it a war. It was survival dressed in tactics. It was defiance dressed in blood. But now, for the first time, we were the ones going forward, no longer reacting, no longer hiding. We were preparing to strike beyond our world, past the atmosphere, past the cradle that birthed us. We were going to them, not to negotiate, not to beg, to send a message. Humanity doesn't bow, we break your gods. The fleet we assembled wasn't sleek, it wasn't pretty, it didn't hum with elegance like the Yshari crafts. It groaned, it screamed, built from what we had. Repurposed space stations, decommissioned orbital platforms, old cargo haulers turned into weapons of war. It looked like hell itself had cobbled together a navy. We called it the Iron Conviction. And every man and woman aboard knew the odds. No one expected to come home. They boarded anyway. I was stationed aboard the Hades 7, a retrofitted mining rig loaded with rail cannons and drop pods. They stuck me there as a liaison, which really meant morale control and intelligence consolidation. But let's not pretend I was just a guy who told the aliens to go screw themselves and somehow became a symbol. I never wanted that. Symbols die first. The commanding officer, Colonel Briggs, was an old-school bastard. Grizzled, scarred, one cybernetic eye, and a hatred for bureaucracy that ran deeper than his war wounds. "You're the mouthpiece, huh?" he asked when I reported in. "I guess," I muttered. He chuckled. "Well, mouthpiece, welcome to hell in orbit. You piss in the wrong corner, the hull tears, and we all die." "Understood, sir." "No, sir. Call me Briggs. I don't like walls between men who are going to bleed together." I respected that. We weren't flying blind. Not entirely. The captured Yshari scout had given us more than coordinates. It had shown us doubt, a crack in the way they operated. They never expected to lose ships, never expected resistance. They didn't design for it. Their core fleets were mobile, but their command structures, those were static, hidden in gas giant rings, buried inside hollowed-out moons, or nestled deep in asteroid fortresses. One of them was in orbit around a brown dwarf star, codenamed Cradle 4, a massive, fortified base that functioned as a supply relay, a comms hub, and, according to decoded fragments, a breeding center for the Dominion's enforcers. We weren't going to hit it with diplomacy. We were going to burn it. The journey to Cradle 4 took 6 days. 6 days in a steel coffin, where the only warmth came from coffee and shared stories. The soldiers aboard weren't the clean-cut types you see in propaganda. They were scarred, some still bleeding, men with tattoos over bullet wounds, faces hollowed by grief. Some didn't talk, others never shut up. But every one of them had the same look in their eyes. "We're bringing hell with us." One of them, name was Dawson, sat beside me in the mess during rotation. Big guy, knuckles like steel bolts. "You believe in redemption?" he asked out of nowhere. I looked up. No. He grinned, a chipped tooth glinting in the low light. "Good. Me neither. I just want to make 'em pay." When we dropped out of FTL near Cradle 4, silence fell across the ship. There it was, floating in the shadow of a dying star. A ringed station stretching thousands of meters wide, like a serpent coiled in orbit. Pulsing lights, docked ships, their banners shimmering in the void. They had no idea we were there. We'd approached using a stolen signal relay, a dead Dominion craft we'd filled with explosive waste and launched ahead of us as a decoy. They scanned it, ignored it. By the time they noticed something was off, we were already moving in. Briggs stood over the comm panel, barking orders. Launch all forward drones, prep railguns, activate scrambler shields. I want that sky lit up before they get a comm out. And then came the drop pods. I'd never felt anything like it. You don't fall in space. Not really. But when those pods detached from the Hades 7 and fired us toward the station, it felt like the world dropped out from under us. No noise, just vibration, like the pod was shaking apart. Then, boom, contact! We slammed into the outer hull of Cradle 4 like a bullet. Charges blew, the door opened, and we were in, though Ishari didn't use corridors the way we do. Their halls were curved, organic, almost like walking through the inside of a rib cage. Glowing walls, slime trails. Too quiet. Dawson was the first to fire. He saw one of them, a tall, pale enforcer with 4 arms and a plasma blade, and didn't hesitate. The bullet ripped through its chest. Black ichor sprayed the walls. They weren't invincible, just armored. And humans know how to break armor. We advanced through their structure, taking room after room. Screams echoed. Their defense systems activated late. Reactive turrets, gas vents, psychic shockwaves. But they underestimated one thing. We don't care what weapons you have if we already planned to die. Our teams reached the core chamber within 2 hours. Inside, suspended in fluid, were hundreds of Y-Shari hybrids, unfinished enforcers being grown like crops. A breeding center. You want to break a species? Burn their future. Briggs gave the order. No hesitation. Set the charges. We sterilize this place. Nothing gets out. Nothing comes back. We rigged the chamber with thermal explosives. Dawson looked at the glass tanks and muttered, "Hope you feel pain, you alien bastards." I stood there, staring at the creatures inside. One of them opened its eyes. Not a soldier. Not yet. Just something that could have been innocent. But we'd learned the truth too late. Mercy was a myth. As we were falling back to the extraction corridor, the alarms went berserk. Not Dominion alarms, ours. "Enemy fleet dropping out of FTL," someone yelled over comms. 6 cruisers, 1 dreadnought. The station shook. Lights flickered. They had called for backup. And now hell was coming. Briggs shouted into the mic, "All units, fall back to outer ring. We hold the line until the core detonates. You die here. You die fighting." I'd never seen combat like that. Hundreds of us against thousands of them. Plasma lit the air. Walls melted. The smell of burning flesh and steel filled our lungs. Men screamed. Some never stopped screaming. But no one ran. We held that ring like demons out of a legend. At one point I saw Dawson go down, chest torn open, still swinging a broken rifle like a club. They swarmed him, and still he roared. That's what it means to be human, not to survive, to fight until the last ounce of rage is spent. Briggs was wounded. Bad. He gave me the detonator. "You started this, Mace. You finish it." I looked around the battlefield. Our dead. They're dead. Then I pressed the button. Cradle 4 exploded in a lightless bloom, silent in space, but louder than anything inside us. The shockwave caught 2 enemy cruisers, tearing them apart. The rest retreated. They didn't stay to recover the bodies. They didn't try to retaliate immediately, because for the first time since this all started, they were afraid. We limped back to Earth weeks later, half the fleet gone. But so were they. We'd struck into the belly of the beast, and lived. News of the Cradle 4 detonation spread faster than any transmission. Humanity wasn't just resisting, we were hunting. The Ishari haven't contacted us since. No more offers, no more demands, no more warnings. They're regrouping. So are we. And every day, new volunteers join the fight. Not for peace, not for glory, but for vengeance. Because now the galaxy knows the truth. You don't offer Earth protection. You pray Earth never comes looking for you. 6 months into the war, Earth was no longer just surviving. We were adapting, evolving. Our scars became blueprints. The Wishari thought they had time, thought we were too primitive to understand their technology, let alone use it. They underestimated the very thing that made us human, the need to understand what tries to kill us. Our scientists didn't sleep. Neither did our soldiers. And while the Dominion pulled back to regroup, we prepared something they'd never seen before, Operation Homefire. Not a fleet, not a strike, a virus. Not biological. That would have been too kind. The Ishari weren't carbon-based, and their genetic structure was more fluid than solid, built to resist the traditional tools of biowarfare. No, we made something worse. We made a mimetic virus, an idea that couldn't be stopped once heard, a thought that broke cohesion, doubt weaponized, psychological warfare at a molecular level, delivered not through code, not through air or skin, but through understanding. We called it the Fire Sermon. It started as a whisper, hidden inside intercepted Dominion communications, a modified string of their own syntax, blended with human logic, rewritten by neural mapping AI to be infectious. Once transmitted, it hijacked the Wishari's groupthink relay system. You see, the Dominion didn't function like we did. They didn't argue, didn't debate. They shared consensus. That was their strength. And now, it would be their undoing. The Fire Sermon didn't scream. It didn't kill instantly. It questioned. Subtly. It planted one simple doubt in every connected mind. What if the humans are right? That was it. But when an empire is built on unity and obedience, doubt is the nuclear option. We released the virus through a captured Dominion relay station, rebuilt, jury-rigged with human tech, and launched like a corpse-laden gift toward a patrol cluster. When they opened it, they didn't find weapons. They found themselves. Then they turned on each other. We watched the whole thing from deep space sensors. One cruiser vented its bridge, another melted its own engines, a third simply shut down. No order, no pattern, just collapse. Harlan watched the feed from the underground command in Argentina. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then, we just tore a hole in their mind. But not everyone celebrated. Briggs, miraculously recovered and now in charge of Black Zone intelligence, spoke up during the next war council. This isn't clean. We're not breaking bones anymore. We're poisoning souls. Harlan didn't flinch. You think the Wishari would show mercy if they figured out how to shatter us from the inside? Briggs chewed on that for a second. But we're not supposed to be them, are we? I sat in the back, listening. I didn't speak, because deep down I knew we'd crossed a line. But that's the thing about war. Once the fire starts, you either feed it or it eats you. Within a month of Fire Sermon deployment, Dominion patrols vanished from Earth's orbit. No raids, no reinforcements. Instead, there were ghosts, ships found drifting, stations abandoned, and most terrifying of all, Dominion cruisers surrendering. They didn't speak, didn't explain. They just dropped shields, cut engines, and waited to be boarded. Some of our units tried to interrogate them, didn't get far. The Wishari aboard simply sat, unmoving. Their eyes, if you could call them that, dim. They weren't dead. They were lost. And yet, we didn't win, not yet. Because deep in the void, the Dominion had a last weapon, one they hadn't unleashed, Until now, it came without warning. A new kind of ship, blacker than space itself. No energy signature, no visible weapons. It arrived in orbit over Mars and just hovered. We scrambled every available unit. Satellites tracked it. Stealth drones approached. But it didn't react. Then, on the third day, it spoke, not in their voice, not in human language. It used our thoughts. Everyone everywhere heard it in their minds. Not a voice, a presence. You have infected unity with chaos. You are a virus of will. Therefore you must be erased. And just like that, the ship fired. Not a beam, not a missile. It screamed. A soundless pressure rippled through the atmosphere of Mars, flattening everything. Domes shattered, sand melted, defense grids collapsed without a single explosion. Harlan watched from orbital command. "That's not a weapon." "It's a purge," I muttered. And the name stuck. We called it the Purger. It didn't just destroy, it erased. It removed memory from machines, wiped minds. Even our AI systems went dark when it came close. So we adapted. The Purger was terrifying, but it had a limitation. It only worked on connected systems. And we went analog. Every unit going forward was stripped of smart tech. No AI, no smart targeting, no live links, just hardwired comms, ballistic weapons, mechanical timers. We went backward to survive the future. It worked. Barely. In Antarctica, a ground team using vintage artillery managed to wound a Purger satellite drone. Not destroy, just damage. But even that was enough to send shockwaves through the Yushari command. They pulled back again. The second wave never came. And that's when we realized something vital. They were afraid of us. Not because of our weapons, not because of our numbers, but because we refused to die the way they expected. Harlan called it in a closed meeting. "We're not fighting a species, we're fighting a belief system, one that demands obedience, that treats doubt as disease." He tapped the table hard. "We are the disease." Briggs smirked. Hell of a compliment. But I saw it in Harlan's eyes. The exhaustion, the weight of all we'd lost. We had shattered their fleets, torn apart their unity, and infected their minds. But at what cost? Cities burned, skies poisoned, entire generations growing up underground. We hadn't won peace. We'd won time. And now? Now we had to decide what came next. Back in Colorado, I visited one of the early Black Zone archives. There, among recovered Waishari data fragments, was a term. Silence doctrine. I translated what I could. It was their last protocol. If a species became too volatile, too unpredictable, they didn't conquer. They sterilized, not with bombs, with silence, wiping out history, erasing existence, turning planets into clean slates. They didn't do it out of rage, they did it out of fear. And Earth? We were next. But this time we wouldn't wait for the knife to fall. Operation Homefire had done its job. Now came Operation Glass Hammer, our counter-strike. Not covert, not surgical, loud, brutal, and final. We had captured enough Dominion tech to build a single warp lane to one of their outer worlds. Not a core planet, but close. A system called Thelene 9, a staging world, civilian, minimal defenses. Harlan gave the go-ahead. "We don't bomb it, we land." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "To send a message?" "No," Harlan said, "to give them a choice." I nodded. "Join us or watch everything burn." We weren't diplomats. We were giving them one chance, to defect or disappear. The iron conviction launched again. This time not just with weapons, but with witnesses, recovered Dominion defectors, ones who broke free of the hivethink, ones the fire sermon had saved. We dropped onto Thelene 9 like ghosts wrapped in flame. No resistance, no defense, just silence, until, finally, a response. A Yushari elder emerged. No armor, no threat, Just words. You have shattered us, Harlan stepped forward. Number, we woke you up. Back on Earth, the skies are clearer now. The stars aren't just lights, they're roads. We haven't won, but we haven't lost. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, humanity has a seat at the table. Not as allies, not as children, as a force to be feared. Because we don't bend, we don't break, we burn, and if they come again, we won't ask, from who? We'll ask, which one of you wants to die first? We didn't celebrate, not really. After Thelene 9 bent the knee without blood, there were no parades, no flags, no speeches, just silence. Because something felt off. Victory, if that's what it was, had come too quiet, too clean. And the men who'd been fighting since the first drop of alien ash on Earth knew better than to trust a quiet battlefield. They say peace is the absence of conflict. But on Earth, it just meant waiting for the next war. I walked through the ruins of old Chicago 2 weeks after the last Dominion ship disappeared from Earth's orbit. Ash still coated the skyline. Towers broken in half like snapped bones. Entire districts buried under collapsed concrete. Rats, scavengers, kids with rifles taller than they were. A place that used to hum with life, now whispered like a graveyard. There were posters on the cracked walls. Torn, faded, but you could still read them. We are still here. A kid passed me, 10, maybe 11, dressed in patchwork armor made from old car parts, one eye swollen shut, carrying a pistol with no safety. He looked up at me. Didn't speak, just kept walking. That was our next generation. Not dreamers, not poets. War-born. In the Black Zone shelters, life crawled back slowly. Water filters still failed. Power rationed. Food grown in vertical bags under synthetic light. The air always tasted like metal and sweat. But people were rebuilding. Not out of hope, out of stubbornness. They raised scrap buildings, welded together new homes from the wreckage of tanks and alien hulls, planted in bomb craters, raised families behind blast-proof shutters. And every one of them had the same expression. Not joy, not relief, just exhaustion. The kind that doesn't sleep, the kind that doesn't stop until the body gives out. Harlan and I met again in the remains of the Colorado bunker, once a hub of resistance, now half buried under rock, half alive with humming servers and armed guards. He looked older, grayer, eyes sunken. The war had eaten chunks out of him, and what was left was pure grit holding a soul together. You hear about the Purger fragments? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, they're changing. He sat down slowly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. We've been monitoring what's left of their core processors. They're not dead, not offline. They're learning. Learning what? He looked at me, not with fear. Worse, with certainty. Us. The fire sermon had broken the Dominion's unity, but it hadn't destroyed their need to adapt. That was our mistake. We thought chaos would be their end, but it became their evolution. Scattered Dominion fleets, no longer bound to the hive mind, had begun forming splinter factions, each different, each twisted, some seeking peace, others something worse. We intercepted one signal from a rogue Dominion cruiser orbiting the dead moon of Virex 12. The message, translated through painfully slow neural syncs, was short. Pain is clarity. We wish to become human. Briggs, reviewing the footage later, leaned back in his chair and muttered, "What the hell have we done?" The horror wasn't in their words. It was in the video attached. A Yushari creature, once regal and alien in posture, now half-human. Skin stretched, bones restructured, the mouth wrong, too wide, eyes blinking out of sync. It spoke with a voice torn between dialects, between sanity and madness. We want your strength. We want your hate." Then it tore out its own throat. End of message. In the following weeks, rogue Dominion units began appearing near outpost zones. Some fled, some begged, and some attacked with weapons they never used before. Biomorphic systems built from both Dominion tech and human anatomy. Some were using our DNA, some were using our voices, and others, our dead. On the outskirts of Zone 14, formerly Berlin, a squad reported a Dominion hybrid walking into camp wearing a stitched-together human face. No weapons, no words, just a soft humming of an old Earth lullaby. We still don't know how they got the recording. But everyone who heard it that night couldn't sleep after. The soldier who shot it claimed the creature smiled before falling. Harlan convened an emergency summit. Leaders from black zones across the globe were brought in, some in person, others by hard line only. His message was clear. We broke the hive, but we didn't kill the queen. Briggs leaned forward, half his face hidden in shadow. You're saying there's still something out there, running the show? Harlan tapped a finger on the table slowly. Not running, watching, waiting. We've seen fragments of code in purger systems we can't translate, a logic loop that keeps adapting to us. I frowned. You think it's building something? I think it is something, Harlan said, and it's not done with us. They called it the root mind, a Dominion construct older than any Wishari individual, a neural archive system that had overseen the rise of the Dominion across galaxies. We didn't know where it was, didn't even know what it looked like, but we knew it existed, and that it had watched everything. It had seen the fire sermon, it had seen us destroy Cradle 4, it had seen what we became. And now it was moving. 3 black zone satellites picked up movement from deep interstellar space. Something was coming. Bigger than any purger. Bigger than anything we'd seen. Too far to intercept. Too fast to stop. Just coming. In the days that followed, Earth grew cold again. Not temperature-wise, spirit-wise. People stopped smiling. Even the kids with makeshift guns in the slums went quiet. Because we all felt it in our bones. The war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. And in the quiet, something else began to rise. Not hope, not fear, but something ancient, something human. Resolve. We didn't know what the root mind was, didn't know what it wanted. But we knew this. If it came to Earth looking to finish what the Wishari started, it would find a planet already in hell, and every soul still breathing was ready to drag it in deeper. They thought they'd protect us. Then they thought they'd erase us. Now they're learning the final lesson. Humanity doesn't lose. We just decide how much we're willing to lose to win. The sky broke on a Thursday. The root mind didn't announce its arrival with thunder or fire. No armies, no ships, just silence. So deep and wide it swallowed every signal, every satellite, every whisper we tried to send into orbit. One by one, our orbital platforms died. No explosions, just off, dead, like they never existed. Then came the blackout. 10 minutes after we lost visual contact, every power grid across Earth's surface flickered. Not full failure, just enough to rattle every soul left alive. Just enough to remind us, you are being watched. I stood on a cliff near the Colorado Waste Zone, where the Rockies used to scrape the sky. What was left looked like the bones of a dead god, torn peaks, half-buried bunkers, and snow turned black by ash. Behind me, the wind carried the low grind of generators, the chatter of soldiers, the crying of a child being fitted for a biosuit. Ahead? The sky was bleeding. Not red, not orange, something else. A dull shimmer, like oil on water. Colors your brain recognized but couldn't name. We had no visuals, nothing on radar. But every man in command, from Harlan to the lowest grunt in Zone 3, knew the truth. The root mind had arrived. Not in orbit, above orbit, high, higher than our tech could see. It was massive, too massive for us to comprehend. But its presence pressed down like the sky itself had weight, like we were ants under a boot that hadn't dropped yet. In Argentina, Harlan stood in front of what was left of Earth's combined defense network, a thin line of generals, hackers, engineers, and ragged survivors pretending to be diplomats. "I'm not gonna dress this up," he said, voice hoarse. "We're not gonna outgun it. We're not gonna outrun it. We sure as hell ain't gonna outsmart it." He leaned forward. "But we're not gonna beg either." He pointed to the holomap behind him, where the last few functional satellites showed heat patterns moving across the upper atmosphere. "We can't beat it," he tapped the table, "but we can hurt it." That was the birth of Protocol Ashfall, our final defense, not a weapon, a sacrifice. See, in the ruins of Siberia, we had buried something after Cradle 4, a prototype built by the rogue physicist Vanko Dressner, a forbidden thing, a singularity core wrapped in dark matter chains, unstable, illegal, designed to tear space-time. It was nicknamed the Needle, because once fired, it didn't explode. It punched, straight up, into orbit, right through anything in its way. The Needle wasn't accurate. It couldn't be aimed. You had to lure the target above it. So we built the bait. Thousands of thermonuclear pulses, static sound arrays, radiation beacons tuned to mimic the fire sermon's pattern, all launched from Earth's surface, like a flare from a dying animal begging for attention. It worked, because just like us, the root mind couldn't ignore the thing that hurt it most. It began to descend. I was stationed at Relay Point 7, not far from the Needle's silo, a bunker buried 5 miles under bedrock, staffed with technicians, engineers, and a handful of soldiers with eyes too tired to blink. We watched as the sky turned darker by the hour. No clouds, just wait. One of the techs, a girl no older than 20, whispered, "It's blotting out the sun." She wasn't wrong. By the time the root mind's edges breached our upper atmosphere, daylight vanished across half the globe. Its presence was so vast, its shadow covered entire continents. Birds fell from the sky mid-flight. Children in the shelters cried without knowing why. Oceans pulled in on themselves, tides breaking patterns that had existed for millennia. And all the while, no attack, just pressure, as if it was watching, waiting, measuring. Harlan gave the order 2 hours after first contact. "Begin Protocol Ashfall." We watched as the radiation beacons lit up across Eurasia. We saw the sky pulse. We saw the root mind shift. And for the first time, it moved. Fast. Too fast. A blur of stars and black matter descending like a divine blade. It swallowed orbiting debris, shattered the moon's far side, and coiled above the Siberian wasteland like a storm god. And then, it opened. No weapons, just a single beam of compressed light, fired not at the Earth, but through it. We watched the crust tear open over Ukraine. We watched the cities fold in on themselves. It wasn't trying to kill us. It was trying to remove the infection, burn the idea of us from the ground up. The Needle fired 5 minutes later. No countdown. No sound. Just a white spike, pure gravitational force, launched through miles of bedrock and ash, screaming into the sky with such violence it cracked the air. It struck the root mind dead center. For half a second, the world stood still. Then it screamed. The root mind didn't die, but it felt it. Its hull, if you could call it that, rippled, fractured, poured black liquid fire into the clouds. It didn't bleed like us. It bled time, space, concepts. The pressure vanished, the sky cleared, and then it disappeared. Not fled, not destroyed, just gone. What came next wasn't victory. It was silence, again. but different this time. Not the silence of waiting, the silence of aftermath, of knowing what you did can't be undone. The Siberian region was glass, the atmosphere damaged, ripped in ways we didn't understand. Radiation storms circled the equator for weeks. We lost 2 zones to psychotic breaks. People hearing voices, seeing things that didn't exist. Or maybe they did. We don't know. Because the needle didn't just break the root mind's focus. It broke something else too. Something beneath us. There were tremors, not seismic, not natural, but felt in the mind. Across cities, survivors began painting symbols on walls, symbols they'd never seen before. The same ones found in Dominion archives. Circles, spirals, eyes with no pupils. We think the root mind left something behind. A seed, an echo, a final thought, waiting, watching. Maybe for revenge, maybe to rebuild, we don't know. And the truth? We're too tired to find out. Harlan disappeared a week after Ashfall. No note, no trace. Some say he went underground to prepare for the next war. Others think the root mind took him, pulled him into whatever dimension it occupies now. Briggs took command. His first order? No statues, no graves. We ain't done yet. As for me, I still walk the ruins, still speak to survivors, write what's left of the truth. Because someone has to remember, not the battles, not the weapons, but the choice. That when we were offered protection, we laughed, and when they came to erase us, we bit back hard enough to bleed gods. We don't know what's coming next, but we know what we are now. We're not just survivors. We're the warning label on Earth's orbit. We are the species that doesn't bend, doesn't beg. And when we're cornered, we burn the universe down with us. 3 years after the needle fired, Earth still spun. But it wasn't the same planet. The stars looked closer. Not because they moved, but because something behind our eyes had changed. Most people didn't notice it. But the ones who'd fought? The ones who had heard the root mind scream? They woke up each morning with light bleeding at the corners of their vision, or a soft humming in their ears like distant singing. Some called it trauma. Others whispered a different word. Contamination. In the rebuilt ruins of old Santiago, I sat across from a boy who wasn't supposed to be alive. His name was Leo, 6 years old, born 3 weeks premature, mother dead in childbirth. Father, unknown. But the child glowed. Not literally, not in some movie special effects kind of way. He just felt wrong, like he existed a second ahead of everyone else. He finished sentences before people said them. He stared at you like he was remembering a dream you hadn't dreamed yet. And when I asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up, he didn't say soldier or leader or hero. He said, I won't need to grow. I already remember what comes next. They started popping up in isolated pockets, not just children, adults too. Survivors who had been nearest the needle's activation. People who had stood beneath the root mind's shadow and somehow didn't die. People who had heard the fire sermon not through comms, but in their minds. Their bodies remained intact, their blood still red, their bones still human. But their minds? Their wiring had shifted. Smarter, quieter, more distant, and most disturbing of all, connected to each other, without speaking, without devices. They just knew. Briggs was the first to call it publicly. Cognitive drift. The war didn't end, he said in a private address to global leaders. It just burrowed in. It rewrote us. Maybe not all of us, but enough. He was scared. I could tell. And if Briggs was scared, the rest of us damn well should be too. We tried isolating the drifted. Didn't work. They weren't violent. They didn't resist. They just left, walked into the wastes, into the red zones, into collapsed cities no longer mapped. And every few months, they'd return. Not alone. They came back in groups, always more of them, always more synchronized. They didn't preach. They didn't threaten. They just observed. And when asked what they were doing, the answer was always the same. Waiting. The first incident happened in Quebec. A recovery unit stumbled across a drifted gathering, a group of nearly 40, standing silently around a crater filled with black fluid. It wasn't Dominion tech. Wasn't human either. It pulsed. When the soldiers tried to remove it, the drifted didn't resist. They watched. And as soon as the team touched it, their commanding officer dropped to his knees and began screaming. Not in pain, in languages. 12 of them. None of which he ever knew. The incident was buried. Briggs ordered all future contact with drifted clusters to be non-invasive, but whispers leaked of the new silence, of something beneath the earth stirring. Old Dominion data shards spoke of a root seed, planted by the root mind in the event of its destruction, a last contingency, a final evolution. We always thought the war would be a fight, ships, guns, screaming, but this was infection without disease, control without force. The drifted weren't turning Earth into a battlefield. They were turning it into a womb. I met Leo again in year 4. He hadn't aged a day. That's not poetic exaggeration. He literally hadn't aged. His hair the same, skin flawless, voice unchanged. I asked him where he'd been. He smiled. Not cruel, not arrogant, just calm. Inside, he said. Inside what? I asked. The mind's dream. I tried pressing him, tried asking what the root mind wanted, why it hadn't returned, what this slow takeover really meant. He reached across the table, touched my hand, and then I saw it. For 1 second, maybe less, I saw everything. A glimpse into something endless, vast corridors of thought, galaxies blooming like neurons, language that looked like light, and at the center, humanity, not enslaved, not destroyed, integrated, rewritten, not with chains, but with choice. I woke up 3 days later with dried blood in my ears. No one could explain it. They ran tests, said I was fine. But ever since then I haven't slept through the night, and I haven't been able to lie. It's like whatever touched me peeled back something, made pretending impossible. Briggs visited me not long after. He looked tired, sick, eyes yellowed, skin dry. He sat without a word. Finally he said, "They want us to join them." I nodded. He spat on the ground. I'd rather burn, I believed him. But we both knew it wouldn't be fire this time. Not like the last war. No scorched skies, no screams, just silence, growing, spreading. In some places, entire towns went drifted. No resistance, no violence. They just stopped answering comms. When recon teams entered, they found people alive, healthy, calm, too calm. No emotion, no hunger, no ambition, just peace, artificial, unsettling, sterile. In year 5, Earth declared cognitive quarantine zones. No drifted allowed past the borders, no civilians allowed in. Shoot on sight if breached. It felt like trying to build a wall against the wind. But it was the only thing we knew how to do. I asked Leo, one final time, what would happen if the drifted took over? He looked at me for a long time, then said something that still haunts me. We won't take over. He looked up at the sky. We're just what comes after. The war is over, but the species that won it might not be human anymore. By year 6, the world was quiet again, not because peace had returned, but because the noise had been absorbed. The drifted outnumbered the rest of us. It didn't happen in a battle. There were no airstrikes, no coups, no blood in the streets. It was more like fog creeping over a valley. People gave up their names, stopped asking questions. They just joined. The last human stronghold wasn't a fortress. It was a memory farm in northern Greenland, an old data bunker from the Cold War, repurposed as a cultural vault after the Dominion War. Inside its frozen servers were the last unaltered archives of who we used to be. Books, recordings, article journals, tears etched into digital letters from fathers to daughters before the first bomb fell. Laughter caught on camera before Earth learned how to hate the stars. It was the final sanctuary for the soul of our species, and they came for it, not with weapons, but with kindness. A drifted emissary arrived on the 5th day of what we now called the Quiet Siege. A woman, late 20s, dressed simply, no scars, no glow, just ordinary. Except for the way she spoke, like every word was chosen by 1,000 minds. "You're scared," she said. Briggs, thin, coughing up blood, skin held together by willpower, looked her in the eye and said, "We're not scared. We're disgusted." She didn't flinch. "This world can be healed. We can remove everything that hurt you." "Pain made us," Briggs rasped. "Take that away and we're not human. We're ornaments." The woman blinked slowly. "Isn't that better than extinction?" He leaned forward. "I'd rather rot in the dirt than become a pretty piece on your shelf." They gave us 7 days to consider integration. They promised no violence. They didn't need to fight. They knew time was on their side. And they knew what the rest of us were just starting to admit. We were tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. I walked the corridors of the memory farm on the 2nd night. The servers hummed. Cold mist hung in the air. It smelled like copper and electricity. I stopped in front of one terminal, typed in my father's name. His voice played through the speaker. It was a recording he left before the orbital blackout, saying goodbye to me and my brother, telling us to survive, to stay sharp, to remember who we were. I didn't cry, I just sat there, listening, trying to feel something. But grief had burned itself out years ago. Only ash remained. On the 5th night, Leo returned. Same age, same eyes. He walked past guards without being stopped. They parted like fog around him. He found me in the server room, staring at blank monitors. "You're still resisting," he said. "You're still pretending you're not human," I replied. He sat beside me. "You think we erased humanity," he said. "But we didn't. We evolved it." "You sterilized it," I shot back. "You took the pain, the failure, the chaos. You took the fight." He tilted his head. "Isn't that what every parent wants for their child? A world without suffering?" "No," I said. "A real parent teaches their kid how to survive it." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "You're scared of being forgotten." I looked at him. "No," I said. "I'm scared you'll remember us wrong." On the 6th day, Briggs collapsed. He died in the medbay, surrounded by the last soldiers who remembered his real name. They wrapped him in an Earth flag, worn, burned, patched with cloth from 6 different nations. They didn't play music. They just stood in silence. He wouldn't have wanted tears. Only defiance. The next morning, the drifted returned. This time, they didn't knock. They walked through the front doors like they already belonged. And maybe they did. Most of the staff didn't stop them. Some even held the doors open. Leo led the group. He stood in the center of the main archive hall as I waited near the last terminal. "We're not here to destroy," he said. "We're here to carry it forward." I stepped aside, let him see the old server. "This is the last memory untouched by the war, the last piece of Earth before the root mind came." He nodded. "It belongs to you now," I said. He reached for the data core. I drew my pistol. His hand stopped mid-air. Everyone in the room froze. I didn't aim at him. I aimed at the core. One shot, a single high-caliber round, right into the drive. It hissed, smoked, and died. You destroyed it, Leo whispered, not angry, not sad, just confused. I nodded. It was never meant for you. He didn't argue. He just looked around, at the others, and then, to my surprise, he smiled. Not a triumphant smile. A sad one. I hoped you'd do that, he said. He walked out with the drifted, didn't say goodbye, didn't threaten, and as they vanished into the horizon, the snow swirling behind them like ghosts. I realized something. He meant it. He wanted us to make that choice, one last human act, a refusal. Now it's year 10. There's no war, no violence, just cities filled with peace and silence and eyes that don't blink enough. They rebuild fast. They don't argue. They don't age. They don't dream. The drifted world is clean, efficient, purposeful. But I don't live in it. I live in the cracks, the shadows between what we were and what they are. And I'm not alone. There are others. Quietly, carefully, we remember. We pass down stories, smuggled recordings, forbidden names. And when a child asks why things are so perfect now, we teach them something ancient. Imperfection is proof of life. Someday they'll find us. Someday the last truly human breath will be taken. But even then, we won. Not because we survived, but because we told the universe, we are not yours. We were offered protection. We chose resistance. We were given peace. We chose the fight. And when the gods of the stars came to erase us, we made them remember us forever.